Salvete omnes. This is Gai Iuli Caesaris, Commentarii de Bello Gallico Liber Primus, chapter 51. Caesar writes, Post ridie eos diei, Caesar praesidium ut risque casris, quod satis esse visum est reliquit, alarios omnes in conspectu hostium pro casris minoribus constituit, quod minus multitudine militum legionariorum pro hostium numero valebat, ut ad speciem alaris uteretur. Excellent. So post ridie eos diei sets us up with the timeline. We've seen this phrasing a couple of times before, and you can just take it together to mean on the next day. Literally, post ridie is an adverb that means on the after day, the next day, and then eos diei helps define which day. So it's the following day, or the after day of this day, meaning the day that he was currently talking about. So the next day. Caesar, subject. Praesidium, praesidi, neuter, is a garrison. I would hate to have to leave a garrison here. Either in the nominative or in the accusative, so it's not going to be the subject because, hey, we already got one of them. So it's going to be the accusative direct object, praesidium. So Caesar's going to do something to a garrison, which is a contingent of troops, usually left behind in order to guard something. Utrisque, from uterque, utraque, utrumque. The uter, utra, utrum part declines, the que does not. So it means each of two, or either. Remember that there are two camps in play, two Roman camps, that the Germans have one large camp, and that Caesar now has two camps to keep his supply lines open. So he's got a larger camp, maiora, and then a minora, a smaller camp. So he's talking about utrisque to dative plural either camp, for either camp, a garrison for either camp. Quod satis esse visum est reliquit. Quod, relative clause, relative pronoun introducing us to a relative clause, the antecedent being praesidium. So we're talking about a garrison, must agree in gender and number, not necessarily in case. Praesidium here is accusative direct object. Quod happens to be the subject of visum est. Satis only has two forms, the nominative and the accusative, and it's singular and neuter. Satis, meaning enough. Which enough esse, the infinitive present active of sum esse fui futurus, to be, and then we have the passive of video, videre, vidi, visus, so to see. In the passive, we can translate as to be seen, or as the active voice verb to seem. We can also add seems best, or seems a good idea, especially in the passive. So that's what we have here. Which, a garrison which seemed esse to be satis enough, which seemed to be good enough, which seemed best, which seemed a good idea to be enough, which was seemly enough. How about that? Seemly. And an reliquit is our main verb here, with Caesar as the subject. So Caesar reliquit. Third person singular perfect active indicative of relinquo, relinquere, reliqui, relictus. So to leave behind. And you can tell it's perfect because it drops the N in the present tenses. I'm sorry, the present stem tenses. So reliquit, he left behind. Caesar left a garrison for either camp, which seemed to be enough. Left a garrison which seemed to be enough, which seemed to be good enough, utrisque casris, for either camp. alarios omnes inconspectu hostium. So the alarios, an ala is a wing, little wingy. So an alarios is a thing that's on the wings. Here it's referring to it's basically a synonym for auxilia, the reinforcements, the auxiliaries. These guys would typically be put on the wings of the army when the army is deployed. So hence the use of the term the wingies, the guys on the wings. You could say the auxilia, you could say the reinforcements, you can say the allied troops, omnes, all of them, omnes, omne, all the allied troops, accusative, plural, masculine, direct object. In takes the ablative to show location, conspectus us masculine, sight, you can see spect here. In conspectu, in sight, hostium, genitive plural, of the enemy. Pro, which takes the ablative, in front of, on behalf of, in exchange for. Here it's going to be in front of, location-wise. In front of the castris minoribus. So the castra, aurum, always neuter, always plural camp gets the ablative because of the preposition which takes the ablative. In front of the camp, what camp is that? It's the minoribus. So minor, minoris, and the neuter would be minus, minoris. That is the irregular comparative of parvus meaning small, minor, minoris, minus, minoris, smaller. Superlative for tolals is minimus small, lest. So the smaller camp, remember that there are two camps in play. This is the smaller one we're talking about. So the guys on the wings, all of them, so all the allied troops within sight of the enemy, in front of the smaller camp, constituit. He constituit. He set up. This verb usually means to decide. When it takes a complementary infinitive, you decide to do something, meaning you set yourself up to do something. You decide to do it. Here it just means to set up. He cum statuo, statuere, statui, statutus, to set up. He really set up. He posted them. He posted the reinforcements, the allied troops, within sight of the enemy, in front of the smaller camp. Quod minus multitudine militum legionariorum. So quod, this quod, just like this quote right here, this quote is relative quote. This quote is causal quote. How do you tell the difference? You context, you read. So you can try it out as causal quote, because you can also try it out as relative quote, which you're going to find it's causal quote. Because minus, notice minus is the neuter form of here's minoribus. This is also a neuter form agreeing with the neuter castris, but this minus here is adverb minus. Because less. Multitudine, multitudinous feminine. So great number, large number, a multitude. There's a multitude out there. Multitudine, ablative, singular feminine, and then militum, a large number, a big number, a great number, a multitude of what? Of militum. The genitive here is used to describe what the multitude is, what the great number of things are. Or the great number of things is. The great number of things is a great number of militum, soldiers. Great number of soldiers, and what kind of soldiers? We have this adjective here, legionariorum. It's genitive plural masculine to agree with the genitive plural masculine militum. Because of a great number of what kind of soldiers? Legionary soldiers. He means the heavy infantry soldiers, as opposed to the allied troops, who are less well armored, not as disciplined. Caesar's going to use these guys for show, for large numbers, because less In the multitudine, the large number of infantry soldiers, the large number of heavy infantry, pro, now this pro is the same as this pro. This pro is a locative preposition, as in it takes an ablative of location. This pro also will take the ablative, but it's not going to be a locative. It's not going to show location. It's going to mean on behalf of, instead of, or in comparison with. In comparison with the takes the ablative numero from numerus e masculine, which is being modified by this genitive plural hostium, of the enemy. In comparison with the number of the enemy, valebat, third person singular. Caesar's been the subject of reliquit, constituit, and here valebat, from valeo, valere, valui, valitus, to be strong, to be validus, valid, to have strength. To prevail, prevail, valeo. Can also mean goodbye, as in fare well. Here it means to be strong or to prevail, to have strength in. Because, he's giving the reasoning, because he was minus valebat, minus being an adverb modifying the verb, he was less strong, less powerful. He had less strength in what? In respect to, ablative of specification, the large number of infantry in comparison with the number of the enemy. So he didn't have as many infantry troops as the enemy did, as heavy infantry, because he was less strong. He prevailed less in the number of heavy infantry in comparison with the number of the enemy. He's giving this as an explanation as to why he posted, constituit, the Allied forces, which are typically on the wings, within sight of the enemy in front of the smaller camp. It's to give an appearance, a species, if you will, of having more troops than what he actually has. Because he typically would not put these Allied troops front and center. The brunt of the fighting would be done by the Roman heavy infantry, these militum legionariorum. Ut ad speciem alaris utaretur. We have this ut, this conjunction here, so that, purpose clause. So it would be a telic conjunction. Telic, meaning it shows the end, the telos, the purpose. So that. Ad takes the accusative. To, towards, near. Here it means in relation to or in respect to. Speciem, species, a feminine. Fifth declension, appearance. It's what you can see. You can see that spec here, which also forms the root of conspectu, within sight, what you can see, what your appearance is. In respect to the appearance, alaris utaretur. Alaris is ablative plural, and it's the ablative object of the verb utaretur, because utor, uti, usus sum, to use, always takes an ablative of means because that's the object that you use. That's the thing that you use. It needs an ablative. So that he might use, and you're screaming, it looks passive, don't translate. No, you should translate it as active because it's deponent. Those tricky deponents. So that he might use alaris, the allied troops, the auxiliaries, the wings, the guys on the wings, the reinforcements, as an appearance, as a smokescreen. So that we have, altogether, utaretur forms the end of this, post ridie eos diei. On the next day, Caesar left a garrison which seemed good enough for either camp, and he posted all his allied troops within sight of the enemy in front of the smaller camp, because he was less strong in the number of heavy infantry in comparison with the number of the enemy, so that he might use them for show, so that he might use the allies for show, for the appearance of having more troops. Ipse triplici instructa acie, usque ad castra hostium accessit. Ipse, while he himself, nominative singular masculine Caesar. So this is what he's ordered the allied forces to do in front of the smaller camp, to put them in front of the smaller camp to make it look like, wow, they've got a huge army, a much bigger army than we previously thought. While he himself, Caesar, the very man, Caesar, triplici instructa acie. So triplex, instruo, instruere, instruxi, instructus, and acies, a feminine. All this together, that's right, you guessed it. All these words, an ablative, working by themselves, absolutely. An ablative absolute with his trifold battle line having been drawn up. So after drawing up his trifold battle line, he himself, usque, means all the way, works with odd up to the accusative motion towards castra, the camp, hostium of the genitive plural enemy, accessit. So you got cedo as the root here, cedo, cedere, cesti, cessus, which by itself means to yield, to give way. But when we put a prefix, when we put a preposition and prefix that to the front of the verb now means to move, and the prefix shows you in which direction you're moving. So this is odd. The D just turned into a C due to the process of assimilation, odd similation, where the D becomes like similus, the first letter, the initial letter of cedo. So we have cedo, he moves odd towards. It's also showing up here, odd, moves towards, all the way up to the enemy camp. He approached. So after drawing up his trifold battle line, he himself approached all the way up to the enemy camp. Went right up to the camp of the enemy. He's going to force a battle because he's been told by prisoners that the matres familiae, the mothers of the family, the German matrons, or what's that word we have in English for a woman who has arcane knowledge? She knows hidden things, secrets. She can cast lots. She can read the runes. What we call that? A witch. That's right. The German witches have said that the Germans cannot win in battle against the Romans if they fight before the new moon. So, of course, Caesar's going to force a fight before the new moon. Checkmate. Your witches have said so. Tum demum nec Caesario Germani suascopias casris edduxerunt, generatimque constituerunt paribus intervallis, Harudes, Marcomanos, Tribocos, Vangiones, Nemetes, Seducios, Suebos, omnemque aciem suam raedis et caris circum dederunt, ne qua spes in fuga relinqueretur. So tum demum, tum then, thereupon, at that time, demum is finally, like at last, then finally. Necessario is an adverbial form of necessarios, and it means necessarily, or due to necessity. Then, at last, due to necessity, the Germani, the Germans, suascopias, their own forces. So suos goes with the accusative kopios, accusative direct object, their own forces. Kasris. This is going to be the ablative, and it's ablative of separation. Notice the lack of preposition. It's contained entirely within the verb. So the preposition is there. It's educo. So it would be e kasris eduxerunt, but Caesar's decided to forego the preposition. Good for him. So eduxerunt, the Greeks are in the back cheering enthusiastically. Awesome, way to go. You don't need that extra preposition. So they, the Germans, they led their own forces out of their camp. They have finally done so. We have forced to fight. Now, I read in a commentary that the reason why the Germans were forced to fight here, why Caesar bringing his battle line right up to the Germans' walls, was because the Germans were not entrenched, and therefore they would not be able to hold out against a direct assault. So, necessario, they had to fight. Generatimque constituerunt. Generatimque, the que is the enclitic and, so put that and right here. So they led their own forces out of their camp. And generatim is an adverbial form of generatus, I guess. It's got gens, gentis as its root. So race, nation, clan, tribe. Here, this adverbial form means by tribe, or tribe by tribe. And it modifies as an adverb. It's got that adverbial im. We saw this before in nominatim, name by name or by name. We've seen statim, which means at once, stat. And it modifies this verb constituerunt. So when Caesar posted all of his wingy dudes within sight of the enemy, now the Germs are going to post all their forces, generatim, tribe by tribe. And we get a sort of very, very teeny tiny itty bitty catalog of ships-esque thing of all the tribes. So the people back home can go, wow, as they roll these tribal names off their tongues and go, what fascinating and exotic names these people from so far away have, the Romans can exclaim to each other. And they posted tribe by tribe, paribus intervalis, at regular intervals, with intervals being regular. Hey, look, it's another ablative absolute, with spaces being regular. You can just translate as at regular intervals. The harudes, and these are all accusative because they're direct object of being posted. They're posted, and they posted these tribes tribe by tribe, meaning they put them, the Harudes go here, the Marcomanni go here, the Triboci go here, the Wangiones go here, at regular intervals. And their names are the Harudes, the Marcomanni, Triboci, Wangiones, Nemetes, Sedusii, Schwabi, omnemque, there's the que again, and all of their own battle line. And all of their own battle line, raidis et carris. And we're linking the raidis and the carris. A raida is a four-wheeled chariot. I believe it is of Etruscan origin. But here it is ablative, by means of, goes with carris, by means of carts and carts. Don't do that. Wagons and carts. You could say raida by four-wheeled chariots and carts. Circum dederunt. Circum do dare dedidatus, to give around, means to surround. And they surrounded all their battle line, their entire battle line, with chariots and carts. Ne qua spes in fuga relinqueretur. Ne, lest, and after si, nisi, nomen, ne, all the alis drop away. So this is not aliqua, but just qua. And it's modifying space. any, aliqua space, any hope, space, bay, feminine hope, lest any hope, so that not any hope, in flight, in plus the ablative, in flight, relinqueretur, third person, singular, imperfect, passive, subjunctive, so that not, we're in secondary sequence because they posted, so perfect tense, we've got this imperfect to show contemporaneous or subsequent action to this main verb. Lest any hope be left in flight, so that not any hope be left in flight, so that hope in flight not be left. They're surrounding their entire battle line with chariots and carts, so it is rather difficult to run away because you're going to run into these chariots and carts. You're going to have to climb over these chariots and carts while the Romans run you down. Because presumably if you're running away, you've lost the battle. And they coming after you. Eo mulieres imposuerunt, quae ad proelium proficiscentes milites passis manibus flentes implorabant, ne se in servitutem Romanis traderent. So eo, this is that adverbial eo, there, on that place, meaning on the carts. So on the carts, mulieres imposuerunt. They, the subject is still the Germans. They put impono, it's in and pono. They put on, they placed on that place, they placed there on the carts, the mulieres, their women. Mulier, mulieres, feminine. This is accusative, direct object. They placed their women on their carts and chariots there, eo. Quae, relative pronoun, introducing us to a relative clause, the antecedent being mulieres, must agree in gender and number, not necessarily in case. So if mulieres is accusative plural direct object, well, quae, well, it's got to be plural and feminine. Could be nominative, could be accusative. It's going to be nominative. Quae, who, ad takes the accusative, proelium, to battle, proficiscentes. So this is a present active participle, ens entis, proficiscor, proficisci, profectus sum. So it's a present active participle of a deponent verb, so looks active. Please translate as active. Setting out. Setting out. Who is setting out? Remember that present active participles happen contemporaneously, the same time as the main verb, or whatever verb it's working off of. So it's working off of implorabant. So some nominative or accusative plural, masculine or feminine, is setting out, probably ad proelium, to battle. The women maybe are setting out to battle. Ah, the milites, here we go. The accusative plural masculine, milites, because the mulieres, this quae, or the quae is referring to the mulieres. This is the nominative subject of implorabant inside this relative clause. The milites is the direct object of implorabant, and proficiscentes agrees with the milites because the soldiers are the ones heading out to battle. So they, accusative, direct object, milites, soldiers. Passis manibus, and you might be looking at passis and thinking, of course, it is pace or step. Hold on a moment. What form would that be from passus us, masculine? Give it a moment, decline it, go on. It's a fourth declension. Us, ui, u, us, ibus, ibus. Hey, passis shouldn't exist. That's not a form of passus us, masculine. This is a verb, or more correctly, this is a verbal. This is a participle, perfect passive participle of pondo, pondere, pondi, passus. Panda, no, not panda. This is to stretch. So that's how we get pace, because a pace is when you're stretching your legs, or you're stretching your legs. It's 2 steps. So we have passus, stretched manibus, with stretched manibus hands, outstretched hands. So their hands are outstretched. Manibus from manus, us, feminine. Fourth declension, with hands outstretched. Flentes, this is a present active participle like proficescentes, but fleo, flere, flebi, fletus, to weep, to cry. Does not agree with the milites, the soldiers. This agrees with the quae, the women. The women are weeping. They're weeping with outstretched hands. Weeping with hands outstretched. And then our verb is imploraban, from imploro, implorare, imploravi, imploratus. They are imploring, begging, beseeching an accusative direct object, which would be the soldiers, who at the time of their imploring, the soldiers are proficescentes, heading off to battle. The women, while they are imploring them, these mulieres, they are flentes, they are weeping with their hands outstretched. So the men are marching off to battle. The women have been placed upon the raidis and the carris, upon the wagons and the carts, which surround the battle line, keeping the soldiers from fleeing. And they cry, flentes, they're weeping, hands outstretched. And what are they begging, beseeching the men heading off to battle? Nay. Now this verb, it takes an accusative direct object of whom you are imploring. But what you are imploring them to either do or not do, that's going to take a substantive noun clause, right? That's going to take a purpose clause, adverbial, I'm sorry, not a substantive, what. It's going to take a, actually, yes, it is going to take a substantive noun clause, an indirect command. What you beseech, implore. I beseech that you do something. What are you beseeching me to do? That you do something. What were the women imploring the soldiers not to do? Nay, if this were oratio recta, the direct speech, this would be a negative imperative. The women would be saying, don't do this, O men heading off to battle. But because it's being indirectly reported as an indirect command, we use ne plus the subjunctive. And because we're in secondary sequence, the subjunctive, traderent, will be the imperfect subjunctive to show contemporaneous or subsequent action. Ne, lest, so that they not traderent, trado, tradere, traderi, traditus. Trans do, hand across, hand over, surrender. Say, themselves, so that they not surrender them, meaning the women, the mulieres, in plus the accusative servitutem, of servitus, servitutus, feminine. Servitude, slavery. You can see servus being the root of this. Slavery. Into slavery, Romanis. Lest they surrender them, meaning the women, into slavery to the Romans, lest they hand them over to the Romans in slavery. Do not let the Romans enslave us. Do not hand us over. Nolite tradere in servitutem Romanis. Do not hand us over in slavery to the Romans. So there they placed their women, who, weeping with outstretched hands, implored the soldiers heading off to battle that they not hand them over, meaning the women, into slavery to the Romans.